Governor Newsom's tax returns revealed the reason behind the move. What you pay for private health insurance could skyrocket. We explain the change state lawmakers and the governor need the Trump administration to approve and why Republicans want to put a stop to it. Enforcing California's laws.
We are going to be tough on crime. We are going to be tough on the law. We are going to hold people accountable.
How Attorney General candidate Michael Gates plans to tackle crime. Making it harder to raise taxes in cities and counties. Why supporters say it's needed to rein in spending, while critics argue it could affect key services.
Thank you for joining us for California Politics 360. I'm Ashley Zavala. This week, Governor Gavin Newsom and the First Partner released their most recent tax returns. The move comes as the Department of Justice is apparently investigating them and their nonprofits. I was among a few selected journalists to review their personal tax returns from 2021 to 2024. 2025 was not available. The Newsoms filed an extension for that year. We could not take photos or videos or make photocopies. We could simply record information with just pen and paper. Here are some of the takeaways. First, the Newsoms are still multimillionaires, which they have been for years because of investments and Newsom's wine and hospitality business. That's all in blind trusts. Nonprofit money and wages represent a small fraction of their income. Also, the money that they have made has decreased since Newsom became governor. These latest tax returns reflecting about an 18% decrease overall since 2019. To take a closer look at why Governor Gavin Newsom is releasing his personal tax returns, I invited a panel of political experts. Here's part of our conversation. So, Chris, I want to start with you. I mean, is there anything in state law that really requires the governor to do what he did in releasing his tax returns this week?
The law only applies to candidates for governor. And so the first time it was in effect was in 2022. So when the governor ran for re-election, he and his competitors had to release that. You may recall, as a result of President Trump refusing to release his returns, California enacted a law that said candidates for governor and president have to release 5 years of returns. Unfortunately, the court said the state can't impose that on presidential candidates, but it remains in effect for gubernatorial candidates.
Okay, so with the governor not being a candidate for governor this year, I mean, Steve, why release them now?
One word, politics. I mean, it's very clear he's preparing to run for president. He wants to get this out of the way, reduce the damage control. All his competitors have already released their returns. Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Josh Shapiro, all these people have had their numbers out there. So I think he just wants to get this out of the way and move on, especially since wealth is a big issue among Democrats these days.
Yeah, Tim, I mean, from the Republican perspective, how do you see that base unpacking this information?
Well, I think they're going to look at it just like they do everybody else, all the candidates that, Steve mentioned. But, from a Republican kind of competition standpoint, I think the fact is they've got lots more to shoot at in terms of Governor Newsom and policies and things that he's actually done, and the other Democratic candidates do as well, that getting his income taxes out there, just like was said, get it done early, get it out of the way. And, it looks like, there's a few things to take a look at, but not much in terms of what the Republicans are going to really focus on.
Tim, you've worked with wealthy candidates. The Newsoms are they're still multimillionaires, according to these tax returns. But do these personal tax returns paint the full picture of their wealth?
Absolutely not. I've worked with candidates who are very, very wealthy, and they release their tax returns, and I've had reporters sit there and say, well, where's all the money? What do they pay taxes on? Well, no surprise to the general public out there, wealthy people have their money all over the place, and it's not necessarily reflected all the time in income taxes, and there's other ways in which to get that information out there or to ask about it, but the full picture is not always painted by what's on your tax returns.
Chris, do personal tax returns show like the full picture of how these two benefit?
No, because remember, just by its name, an income tax return shows income. Many wealthy individuals, their wealth is in assets, their holdings, whether it's stock, real estate, property, etc. So this is just the income that they're receiving. But keep in mind that the governor, just like all local and state elected and appointed officials, every year have to file what we call a Form 700, a statement of economic interest that describes in greater detail those assets, not just their income. So there is information available on the assets of the governor and other office holders.
Yeah, behested payments, Steve, I know, it's a question that has come up with the Newsoms because the governor has lobbied organizations to provide money to nonprofit organizations ran by the first partner. Is that an issue for the governor? Is that part of all of this?
Yeah, this has been an explosive issue. A behest is a gift by a corporation typically to a charity on behalf of a candidate. Sort of a wink and a nod. If you give these people some money, that'll be very nice. So, this has been ethically a problem in the legislature, and I think it extends to the governor, and I think people will make hay of it.
We continue this conversation online. We talk more about the apparent Department of Justice investigation into the Newsoms and their nonprofits. Well, the governor's office released a statement in part saying, quote, Governor Newsom is the first governor in California history to publicly release tax returns covering every year of his tenure in office. That's on top of placing his assets in a blind trust and signing a day one executive order barring state agencies from doing business with his businesses. Meanwhile, the governor's spokesman went on to say Donald Trump is openly cashing in on the presidency, cutting business deals from the Oval Office and enriching himself and his family. The contrast is glaring and the double standard is absurd, end quote. Well, your health insurance could cost more next year. With federal changes, California is changing the way it taxes health plans. Why Republicans in Congress are calling on the Trump administration to reject it. Some California leaders in Congress are calling on the Trump administration to stop a state tax increase on health insurance that still needs federal approval. For some families, this could make their annual bill hundreds of dollars higher. We're talking about the Managed Care Organization tax, also known as MCO. The money from the tax supports the Medi-Cal program here in California. The feds cover taxes for Medicaid enrollees, and people with private health insurance pay for it themselves. Until this year, California charged the federal government more for Medicaid enrollees than private insurance. With new federal changes, the tax has to be the same for both private and Medi-Cal plans. So, to comply, the governor and state lawmakers passed a plan to start charging just under $9 a month, up from about $2 a month. For a family of four, that would add up to about $400 more per year. These changes could take effect as soon as January, but it needs approval from the Trump administration. I sat down with Republican Congressman Vince Fong, who has been speaking out against this. Here's part of our conversation. You and a group of House members sent a letter to Health and Human Services asking them to reject California's new MCO, Managed Care Organization plan changes, essentially. Just why did you do that?
Well, because Gavin Newsom is going to try to bail out or cover up his budget deficit by taking health care funds that was supposed to be dedicated to Medicaid in California. So that's terrible policy. It's something that we warned about when I was in the state legislature, that when you get revenue for Medicaid, it has to stay in Medicaid. It can't be swept into the general fund. And so that's the problem that currently exists, is that what the governor is proposing is to increase taxes, that one of the biggest taxes on Californians in our state's history. It's going to impact every healthcare plan, $400 per family, probably even higher. It's going to impact families, it's going to impact small businesses, it's going to impact local governments. All of that gets passed on, and all the while, it's just to cover up Gavin Newsom's fiscal responsibility. And that's why it should be rejected.
Okay, have you gotten a response from HHS, CMS, Robert F. Kennedy, Dr. Oz, anyone? Have they weighed in on this at all?
We haven't gotten a response yet. We've sent our letter in, but the frustrating thing about this is that the governor knows that his proposal is irresponsible. So he submits a proposal that violates Prop 35. He knows it. He submits a proposal that he knows he's going to basically rob to cover up a budget deficit, and it flies in the face against Prop 35. Prop 35 was passed by the voters. supported by healthcare organizations across the state to ensure that this never happened, to ensure that the money that was received, if the federal government decided to provide resources to California, that it would go to increase reimbursement rates, it would stabilize the network of providers, it would ensure more access, reduce wait times. That's the reason why Prop 35 was put in place. The governor is ignoring Prop 35 with this proposal. And if you look at the solvency of Medicaid, if you look at the history of the governor's administration, Medicaid has expanded by over, let's see, has doubled. It was $93 billion that the state spent when the Governor Newsom entered into the governorship. It's now over $200 billion that the state's spending. All the expansions that have occurred has been irresponsible. And if you look historically in the past, Medicaid has borrowed billions of dollars to cover their expenses that they didn't have budgeted. So this is the reality that exists, and the governor is just basically like realizing that he's got a mess and he's just trying to figure out how to get money. And that's not why the MCO was created.
So right now, California's elected officials are still waiting for the Trump administration to decide. Congressman Fong and I also talk about the impact of the timing of all of this. While enforcing California's laws, why Attorney General candidate Michael Gaetz wants the job. Ahead of the general election in November, I'm sitting down with the candidates running for major statewide offices. This week, we're focused on Attorney General. They are considered the state's top cop and lawyer. They lead the California Department of Justice. The Attorney General is also considered the representative for the people of California in civil and criminal cases in both state and federal courts. Attorney General Rob Bonta is running for re-election. Republican candidate Michael Gaetz is challenging him. This week, I sat down with Michael Gaetz, who explains how he would make an impact if elected. Sitting down with Michael Gaetz.
So California needs rescuing, and I think I'm the person to do that.
The longtime Huntington Beach Republican has decades of experience working as an attorney in private practice and for the government.
I've argued in various federal district courts throughout the country, Washington State, California, Washington, D.C. And then, in addition to that, I'm actually certified as a member of the United States Supreme Court. So if called upon to argue a case before the Supreme Court tomorrow, I could fly back to D.C. and do so. So just very, very blessed with a great legal career. I've practiced in elections law, election integrity. I've practiced in California constitutional law, U.S. constitutional law, First Amendment. I even had a Second Amendment case. I've done parental rights litigation. I've done defense of police litigation. For years, I've taken cases to trial defending our police officers, both in Huntington Beach and for the Orange County Sheriff's Department. So while our current Attorney General has spent his days in the halls of the legislature, I have spent my days in court trying cases defending Huntington Beach residents, defending everyday Californians.
So day one, what is the very first action you would take if elected?
So I have said this before on the campaign trail, the very first thing I'm going to do, so you may know that Rob Bonta recently, and again, I think it's because it's an election year, recently sued a number of hospitals, including a children's hospital, to force these hospitals to perform trans surgeries on minors, on small children. On day one, I'm going to dismiss those lawsuits. We are going to protect children.
Gaetz's campaign promises include holding California's Democratic supermajority legislature accountable and to follow federal laws set by the Trump administration. He also promises to make California tough on crime again, even if it means more spending on prisons.
Part of what, initiated a lot of California's criminal justice laws, though, is the prison overcrowding concern that the Supreme Court flagged. And since then, California has been trying to ways to, lessen that population. Your response to that, how would you balance, this court order essentially that California is under and this tough on crime stance that you'd like to take?
Right, so we've got a reverse course because, as I said, California is one of the most dangerous states to live in. The 2026 study from the Consumer Affairs literally ranks it as the second most dangerous state in the nation. We do not have to live like that. We, as the Attorney General's office, under my leadership, we are going to be tough on crime regardless.
He had nothing positive to say about his opponent, Rob Bonta.
So he's not doing his job. He's failed as our Attorney General, and frankly, that's why I'm running.
And in terms of the Attorney General, Rob Bonta specifically, he's known for filing these lawsuits against the Trump administration, money and power that the legislature has given him. Would those lawsuits stop under Attorney General Michael Gates? What happens with that?
So what we're not going to engage in is we're not going to engage in political or politically charged weaponization of the department, which is what we're seeing. Rob Bonta is literally out there taking victory laps saying 78 lawsuits in 78 weeks. I mean, that's absolutely 78 lawsuits against the Trump administration in 78 weeks. That's absolutely ridiculous. If there is some merit to challenging the federal government over something, that's one thing. And so I'm going to look at those lawsuits.
My full conversation with candidate for Attorney General Michael Gates is available right now on calpolitics360.com. Also, this November, voters will decide whether or not to make it harder to pass special local taxes. Supporters hope this will limit future taxes, while critics argue this could impact key services. California voters in November will decide whether to make it harder to pass new taxes in cities and counties. While supporters of Proposition 43 say this will protect communities from higher taxes, critics worry about the future of key services.
It will close a loophole that was created by the courts.
John Capal with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is the reason why Prop 43 is on the ballot.
We're on a train wreck path right now, and the last thing we need to do is start raising taxes or make it easier to raise taxes.
Proposition 43 makes it harder to pass special local taxes that are proposed by citizens or special interest groups. Special taxes are dedicated to a specific purpose instead of general government use. Right now, local governments like your city council or county supervisors can propose a special tax, but voters must pass it by a 2/3 vote. But if a citizen or special interest group gets a special tax on the city or county ballot, it only needs to pass by a simple majority vote. This happened recently in Los Angeles. Voters approved a citizen-led mansion tax to help with affordable housing and homelessness programs. It passed with 58% of the vote. Under Proposition 43, that tax would not have passed.
Proposition 43, at its core, makes it harder to raise taxes. It restores the original intent and language of Proposition 13, and it may be one of the few things that will prevent higher taxes.
Capal is talking about the state's nearly 50-year-old real estate rules that are part of the state constitution. He says in 2017, the state Supreme Court undermined some of those rules by lowering the threshold for citizens groups to get special taxes passed. Since then, there have been about 30 new special local taxes across the state, on top of other cost of living increases in California.
Government is a growth industry in the state of California, and unfortunately, it is resulting in California having a very hostile reputation nationally.
Firefighter and someone who serves the community, Proposition 43 as it's written, it actually takes control away from the communities we serve.
Sacramento area firefighter Trevor Jameson says Prop 43 could put the future of local key services at risk.
Right now, the majority of voters have the ability to direct the way their local resources are used through citizens' initiatives. The Supreme Court found that to be legal. I think what this is trying to do is undermine the Supreme Court and take away local citizens' ability to have their communities be served.
Jameson and other opponents say it could impact future money, not just for firefighters, but other emergency responders, schools, healthcare, and the response to homelessness. Prop 43 faces fierce opposition from powerful labor unions.
They say take a look at the proponents of the Yes campaign. I believe those are driven by special interest, big money groups that are not really looking out for working families. I think they're looking out for their own interests.
If passed, that higher vote threshold of 2/3 vote proposed in Prop 43 would apply to proposals after January of 2027. The Legislative Analyst's Office notes this does not impact current local government budgets, but it could prevent their revenues from increasing. It's not clear by exactly how much. Right now on calpolitics360.com, you can watch this week's full interviews We also want to hear from you. What issues do you want us to cover on this program? What should we talk about? Send us an email at contact@calpolitics360.com. Thank you for joining us for this week's California Politics 360. See you next week.